It's his idea. All right, I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Mallory.
Okay. I just want to say, Dan, all your cameras were the same ones that I had, except you left me at the Leica. But it's isn't that funny? Except and I had a brownie.
I had a
One
brownie too.
one shot, one bulb. So I've known Dan, I guess I found out just now through Emily, his just beautiful wife, who's very into animals and saving animals and caring for them. And then after that, I met Dan, and it ended up that when he was living here, and it ended up that we did a photo show at Elsewhere Gallery. Thank you for the prompting before. And his was color, mine was black and white, and we called the show Black and White and Color. And I thought his work was phenomenal. I still do. And if you want to see his work, he does post on Facebook. Is that it? I see your stuff on Facebook, but it's worth seeing. He just now I've seen mostly just nature stuff. I guess because that's where he lives now, and I just his photos are just from the heart and from nature, and it's beautiful. And I think you're going to enjoy this. Did I miss anything, Dan?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So I have to share the screen now, Stephanie?
Yes, sir. Unless you want to speak first, it's up to you.
I think well, I'll continue a little bit more. Basically, as you see now that I have to speak, I suddenly become tongue-tied, which is typical of me. I'm not necessarily, I don't feel like I'm the most articulate person in the world, but I think a couple of people have mentioned how just being out with a camera is a different experience than just being out. And for me, it's exactly the same thing. I'll even say I have one of the busiest minds in the world, but when I have a camera with me, I'm focused and I'm looking at things. So things I'll normally walk by and not see. If I have a camera with me, I'll see everything. And that's the way I approach doing photography. One thing I really liked working as an assistant for all these photographers, even though they're commercial photographers, they still approach photography in very similar ways. Some knew exactly what they wanted in their mind even before they had a model or lights up, and everything would be exactly what they had in their mind. And some would create environments where they could then play in. I'm one of the environments where I want to play in. And but any way is valid. And, you know, whatever works for you is valid. I kind of feel, again, you know, you read these things. Well, this is what composition to be. This is what and it's all crap. Just shoot and make photographs that you like. Well, the biggest thing in photography, and it's gotten so much easier, is the skill of getting what you want. You know, so now you don't have to worry about exposure. You don't have to worry about anything like I had to. And I'm glad I had to learn all those things, because it gives you a background and you don't take things for granted. But again, the most important thing is to make images you like. And if you're new, listen to what other people say, but always come back to you. Does that work for you? Everybody has their own opinion. Everybody has their own way of seeing things. And we can learn a lot from them, but it always has to come back to you. Does that work for me? And that's the most important thing. So with that, I guess I can start.
I just want to add one sentence which popped into my head about your work. I would say poetry in motion.
Oh, thank you. I like that. I'll talk about a book I have at the end where some guy described my photographs as haikus. So I ended up doing a book of photos in haikus, which I'll talk about at the end. Anyway, here goes. Sharing, share. So now So is this all working now? Can you see everything? And you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes, it
Okay.
is.
So basically, I was basically, again, I would just shoot what I liked. I never really thought about things, but obviously I got into shooting landscapes and I was looking at all these landscapes when I first got into nature. And actually I really worked to be the best landscape photographer. So in those days, this was when only, when if you could get a 1 megapixel or 3 megapixel digital camera that you probably spend thousands on, I was shooting with a field camera and 4x5 film. And then I came to Boulder, Colorado, because that's where work took me. And for some reason or other, no matter what film, I was, I used to shoot, originally I shot, all the landscape people shot on Velvia because it was incredibly saturated, and then they can show their transparency. Look, I didn't modify it at all because, well, Velvia modified it for you. You didn't have to modify anything. So I learned to shoot on films like Astia, which was much more lower contrast and less lower contrast and less saturation. But no matter what film I was shooting on in Colorado, I hated everything. And 4x5 color processing is expensive. And even in those days, there were less and less labs available. So it was becoming more expensive. And I picked up a Nikon D300 at the time, and I found that I was getting much better things with that. And it being Boulder and I'm moving here in February, it was all of a sudden winter. So there wasn't even much landscape to look at locally. And most of what we call the high country, which is the mountains, is you can't really get to unless you're willing to hike through snow for a number of miles. So I would look around Boulder, and what I first noticed was all these frozen creeks. So I started with my D300 and just started photographing ice. And again, the weather in Boulder is really interesting because it can be very, very cold. It can be in the minus numbers, but it's usually maybe in the 20s, but it could also be up in the 50s. So you have these creeks and lakes that'll be frozen, and then the day will come along and they'll melt in places and then they'll freeze again. So you're always getting different patterns. And again, and different things in the creek. So it would work. So I would go out to maybe the same place every day and it would always be different. Again, there'd be breaks in it. Again, this is a creek and there's a break in the creek and reflection of the trees and everything. So I would play with all these things. And eventually I ended up getting better camera and lenses I can focus closer with, and just would work with little things like this that I found. And eventually also I ended up getting, I dropped my 80 to 200 zoom. Now they're all 70 to 200s, but my zoom was older. It was an 80 to 200. And it was broken. I had to send it for repair. And I wanted, a telephoto lens. So I remember looking at B&H, and they had a Sigma 70 to 300 macro zoom for something like $110. I said, okay, $110 I can afford. So I bought this Sigma, and it was actually quite a good lens. I mean, it was very flimsy, being it was all made of, the whole barrel was plastic, and I ended up probably owning 5 Sigmas just because after a year or two, the barrel would just move up and down and everything. But I got some very good quality. One thing also that was really, what I like about Boulder is you're photographing a creek, but most creeks are in these canyons. And as the sun comes up, you get reflections from the sides of the canyon walls into the creeks, whether on the water and the ice, and can make extraordinary different patterns. And again, also, there would always be like frozen leaves and branches and stuff. And, sometimes things would just come along. Here there were berries and snowflakes. And should I go slower or keep going at this rate? I don't know.
I think it's been perfect.
It's
Okay.
beautiful, beautiful.
Oh, thank you. This is one lake that's only like 5 minutes from my home. And it's in a residential area, Maxwell Lake. And I don't know what it is, but I can go there almost every time and get something. This is just ice. Again, it would freeze, it would melt, it would freeze, and you would find these amazing patterns. This is actually another creek, and we see the water reflecting the sky on the bottom. We see the reflections from the sides of the canyons, and then we see a little bit of ice on top there. This is this wonderful place. This is park I discovered my first week in Colorado called El Dorado Canyon State Park. And it's really known mostly by climbers. But it's an amazing park, again, because you have, again, it's a canyon, but most of the canyons you have, you know, kind of grass and stuff. So in the wintertime, all the grass is brown and you get brown reflections. But El Dorado Canyon actually has orange walls. And the light reflecting off the orange walls will find these reflections on the creek. And again, then when it's, you know, the shadows are not necessarily blue, but the way even the best sensors can record it, because the color variation is so extreme, you'll get the shadows blue and the highlights as orange. And I'll work with them to try to not make one more too extreme or anything, but I love what I could sometimes find there.
That ice on top?
This is ice in the middle, and that's
Yeah.
just blurred
Beautiful,
cascade, I guess, on top.
gorgeous.
For some
I'd
reason,
love to
what did
hear
I do?
what your exposure
Hmm.
was for all that.
Is that right? Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'd love to hear what your exposure was. Was the camera handheld?
Oh, I'm
Have a
usually, I always shoot on a tripod. It's funny because now I have a completely digital camera and I can shoot with my 400mm lens at a 50th of a second and not have it be blurred most of the time. But if possible, I really like, it's funny, when I started shooting landscape, I came from street shooting. The last thing, to me, a tripod was the biggest burden in the world. I hated it. But if you're shooting, you know, ISO 50 color film, or if you're shooting, you know, or even slower, you have to shoot on a tripod. And I really learned to love the tripod because it forces me to stop and really pay attention, which is very different from street shooting. Like, you're really paying attention in street shooting, but you're really moving from thing to thing. Well, here you see something, you stop. You want vertical or horizontal? What's your focal length? And you really have to be very, very conscious in there. And I really appreciate what it demands of me. And also the fact that I could create a composition because the camera is not moving. I don't have to worry about, oh, my hand was up a little bit, down a little bit, you know, whatever, even, you know, even if it's sharp, it's the composition is never exactly the same. And I love the fact that I can create a composition and just trust it. So I always work, I have a carbon fiber tripod. I always, you know, if I'm going for a hike with friends, I'll take a camera over my shoulder. But if I'm going seriously just to go by myself and see things, I'll always take a tripod. I always have just a tripod and a camera over my shoulder. This is more ice on Maxwell Lake. This is also ice on Maxwell Lake. A lot of people with macros, and you can do them now, blend exposures and everything. And I think it's great if you want to do it. I think it's fabulous if you want to do it. I just don't think that way. So I'm not interested in doing it. I'll just try to get as much interesting parts sharp as possible.
Mm.
But that's just me. Blended, I know there's some people I know who do amazing things with blended exposures.
Mm.
What's a blended exposure?
Oh,
My typical, well, something like this, I imagine I'm probably shooting, I don't like to shoot smaller than f/18 because I think you really start losing quality on the lens. This was probably, for a long time, I was shooting with an 80 to 300 zoom, a Nikon zoom. I work on it. This was probably with a D800 or D850, an 80 to 300, 70 to 300 zoom. This was probably f/18 at probably maybe a number of seconds. I'll try to vary because, you know, long exposures and high ISOs will give you noise. So I try to give us a moderately long exposure and a moderately high ISO. So I try not to shoot higher than ISO 800 and not higher, much slower than more than a few seconds. So if you want, I could come back at some time, not tonight, and probably find the raw file and tell you the exposure, but I couldn't tell you now.
beautiful.
Thank you. But again, I usually try when I'm shooting water not to have, again, because it's digital and everything is free on digital. I'll shoot slow exposures and sometimes faster exposures, but I usually like the slower exposures better.
Mm.
And again, sometimes they're just amazing leaves falling in these creeks and just slowly decaying, making these beautiful patterns and colors. This is, I think, also in El Dorado Canyon. This is the yellow and orange is just reflection from the canyon walls and the creek and a little bit of leaf or leaves in there.
Wow. Mm.
See, these leaves are almost transparent. They're so decayed. One nice thing also, there are a number of different places, and every year it's different because of global warming and how cold it's been and how warm it's been. But some places you'll get these algae kind of growing, and as the creek flows, they just make these beautiful, like particularly the slow shutters, make these beautiful green things flowing through them.
That's gorgeous.
And another thing you'll always find in decaying leaves will always produce some oil, which will sometimes nicely reflect the sky.
Hmm.
This is again El Dorado Canyon. I love El Dorado Canyon. In fact, I was there this morning, though it's so unbelievably crowded in the summertime.
Hmm.
I usually like to go there in the wintertime when it's empty. And these are just streaks on the water. It's probably another
Wow.
El Dorado Canyon.
Wow.
This is again, the blue is probably from decaying leaves. And I just love the patterns it makes with things. And with things like this, it's hard to say. I'm probably usually shooting. Again, I mean, the slowest ISO my camera will be is, I think, is 32. The native ISO is 64. So it's just depending on what I'll shoot. So sometimes, even at 32, if I don't have a polarizer or ND filter, which I rarely use, I'll have to shoot maybe a fifth of a second, sometimes even faster. So I don't know what these are, but these are probably no more than a quarter of a second, maybe slower.
Oh. Are you cropping or is it just straight
It's funny,
shoots?
coming from Cartier-Bresson days, I rarely crop.
Uh-huh.
If something bothers me, I'll crop it, but I don't think there's an image I have that I've cropped that I like better.
Uh-huh.
And and I realize it's crazy. I mean, I should crop, but for some reason or other, I just don't do it. And when I do it, I've never found it to improve anything.
Yeah. No, it's not crazy. I
Well,
just
it's everyone. Well, I kind of feel we all have our ways of working, and we fall into these things, and I'm very happy just to work this way.
beautiful work. Beautiful.
I also like not cropping because again, you get the most quality if you're blowing them up, and I like
Mm.
big prints. My basic print is 16 by 24. I'll print on my own printer. I have a big Epson. I have a 24-inch Epson. I can print 24 by 36.
Wow.
And I've sold not a lot, but I've sold larger things through art consultants and stuff like that. So I've sold probably maybe the biggest might be 40 by 60. Yeah. And believe it or not, actually, I take it back. These people cropped it and they did everything without any of my permission. All they said they wanted to make this a backlit photo, and I think I made it for them. I think 8 feet by 12 feet or something. Whatever I gave it, they ended up cropping it and making it 10 feet by 10 feet. But this was shot with a D800 was it 32, 36 megapixels, and backlit on a wall. It looks great.
Yeah.
So I don't miss the quality of 4x5. I miss having swings and tilts, and I miss the attention it demanded. If you could not space out shooting 4x5, you'd just be throwing out money on everything. There was so much to do to get it right.
Mm.
This is also, in the spring, all the snow melts, so the creeks, some of them get very, very full of all the water rushing down from the mountains. So we're at 5,000 feet, and the mountains literally under 20 miles away are 10,000 feet to 14,000 feet. So this is the same El Dorado Canyon where we had these beautiful rocks and lights and everything. This, I couldn't even go near anything. The water was rushing so fast, but there was these nice little things growing there. And this probably, to get it so nothing was, so the leaves were in two blood, was probably maybe like a fifth or even a tenth of a second, I forget. And this is another local creek. Again, in the springtime, some of them, if they don't, you have these wonderful things growing in there, just like in the other thing. And actually, this is the last of this. The next thing I was going to move into is grasses. And grasses is really how I think I got into thinking of myself as doing macro photography, because I had this 80 to 300 Sigma macro zoom. And all of a sudden I would look at these grasses and I say, oh, and the other thing that's really interesting about grasses in Boulder is they change color. Some of them in places, they'll change color like the trees. So you'll have red grasses and purple grasses and orange grasses. And I would try shooting macros with them because to me, they were just, it reminded me of my days in fashion photography. They were just so graceful. And one thing I noticed is quite the opposite of what I was doing. When you're shooting macros, you usually want to get as much sharp as possible. Here, only by trial and error, I learned that was the worst way to shoot these things, because all you got with these photos that was so damn busy, you would look at them and you didn't even know what the focus was supposed to be. There were just all these things going everywhere. So finally, I started shooting, I think, something like an f7.1, I think was my go-to f-stop with this lens. And all of a sudden, I just kind of hit something with it and it just worked. This is cropped. This was cropped to 8x10 format. This is one of the few I've cropped. And again, this is typical of the colors that are there. In fact, there's one toward the end where the grasses are purple. And I always want to say, I have to show, if I want to show you, I don't have it, but I always tell people, if you looked at the raw file, you would see very little difference.
It's beautiful.
One thing also coming from my commercial photography days is, in those days, the cool thing to do if you were shooting fashion was to shoot with a speed light and get, to kind of get a combination of blur and also get light to make the features sharp. And at least my Nikon D800 and the D300 had pop-up flashes. The newer ones don't, but I ended up buying myself an inexpensive manual speed light that I'll use on things. And this was done, one of the, as we all know, in the summertime is fires. And fires here, a lot of times you get sunrise like this, where the sky is so hazy that the sun rises as this red ball. Here unfortunately, my f-stop was too low, so we got the pattern of the diaphragm. I usually try to shoot, I've learned to try to shoot more open to get rounder patterns. As I'll talk about bokeh in a little while about that. But anyway, so this is kind of this grass probably has a little bit of fill flash on it on the back to match it with the light coming from the background. This is a reflection, actually. I remember this is, again, my favorite place, Maxwell Lake. I went to Maxwell Lake and I saw the sun rising as a ball, and I knew there was no place I could go soon enough before the sun would be too high. And as I was cursing myself, I saw this wonderful reflection of the sun in the water and started working with it. This is another with the rising sun, as you see. And again, this is typical of what grasses will look like there. This is something completely different, but I like this photo, and it's also grasses.
It's funny.
This, I'm pretty sure, along the way, as I would be cursing from the weird thing about the Sigma with the vignetting and the uneven light and stuff like that, I ended up picking myself a Nikon 200mm micro Nikkor. And this lens was made from the days when lenses were built like tanks. And it's built like a tank. And it is, when the D850 came out, which was like what, 44 megapixels or something, Nikon had a list of lenses that they felt the quality of the lens was good enough for the sensor. Even though they hadn't touched this lens in probably 20 years, this lens was on the list. And to show you the popularity of it, they haven't even come out with a new one for the Z cameras. I think the only one who's making a long macro lens now. I know Canon had a 180, I think 3.5 macro lens, and they may be the only one still making one. Maybe they don't even make theirs anymore. I don't know, but you can still find the 200mm micro Nikkor around for about $1,000, and it's the quality. This is probably something like f5.6, and the quality of it is just amazing. I shouldn't say that, but to me, the sharpness that you see in the petals, to me, just makes this photograph.
I'm curious. I have a question. I don't even
Yes.
know if I can articulate this question, but so I've played with a macro before. It's a small thing. I bought it for $100 at Seawood Photo in their junk pile. And so I've tried photographing flowers outside and they're always moving. So I never get them sharp like that. I mean, was it just
Well, use a
perfectly
speed light.
like a flash, an on-camera flash?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting balance. I'll show you some, probably not too late up past this, where you'll see portions of sharpness and portions of blur, where the speed light will stop parts of it. But if you shoot just with the speed light overpowering the light, you'll be sharp, but it'll look like a flash photo. But if you can balance them, you can get some very interesting effects if you don't mind blurry edges. And there's some days it's just too windy. I mean, it's just, you have to pick them. This place here, I mean, some days it's just too windy, or some days I'll just have to shoot with and again, I may have shot, at a higher shutter speed just because I'm shooting wide open. And if I turn the ISO up to 800, I could maybe shoot at like a 50th of a second or something and stop if the breeze isn't too bad. Again, I'd have to look, because for something like this, there's no reason for a slow shutter speed since it's all really the light. And it's the wide lens opening that's giving you that. We have these huge, I don't know if they're dandelions, but they make these wonderful seed balls. And this is also fairly wide open. I don't know if this might have been at something like f5.6. And again, also wide open, and with either the Sigma and also this Nikon, they have wonderful bokeh. So does everyone know what bokeh is?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it just makes these out of focus areas look so interesting. This might have been done with this. These might have been done with the speed light. I think they were. I go back and forth with it. I can't even say why. Sometimes I'll carry it with me. If there's wind, I'll sometimes try to use it, or sometimes I'll try to use it if I just think it might make, if there are some very dark things and light things, to try to even out the light.
Can you talk about the color on that?
This one,
Yeah.
I played with the color a lot on this. I took out, it was, I think the original was probably a lot greener, and I turned in color balance. I turned the green down, turned up the magenta, because I
Wow.
like the color better.
Pretty.
But it's not, to what you see there, it's not that outrageous. But if you find the color too much, that's fine with me. I mean, I sometimes wonder if I'm going too far myself.
I like it.
Oh, okay, good. I mean, you're on Photoshop, you can do anything, and I really try to do things not to just do it, to do it because I think it looks better.
Is that water drop? Are those water
Those are water
drops?
drops, yeah.
Nice. Beautiful.
These almost look like paintings, Dan.
Oh, that's what some people say.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have these things. This is actually probably only done maybe a week or two ago, but I really liked the way the light was coming through them and how the out of focus things looked in there.
It looks like a feather, that one.
This one,
Yeah.
yeah, I like the way that how they work the out of focus, the combination of the out of focus and the sharp ones. This I'd probably stop down more just to get more sharpness in this, because in order to you can't, with such a narrow depth of field, you'd have one branch in focus and everything else would be a blur.
I imagine you use the speed light on that one, right?
Probably, yes, I believe I did. And it's funny, you know, Nikon makes these speed lights. I have no idea what they cost, but I look at them and here I am with a technical background, and I look at them and I can't even imagine how I'm going to operate one of these things. I have this speed light I spent less than $100 for. I looked on B&H last year if I had to replace it, and it was still about $100. And it has like maybe, it goes from, I think, one half, one quarter. So it has about maybe 6 or 7 levels. And most of the time I'm using it at the lowest 2 levels. And it's fine. You know, again, you're working digitally, you shoot it, you look at what you got and you turn it up and you turn it down. It's very easy. I mean, you know, I don't see any reason why you need to have all this automatic, at least for what I'm doing, all this automatic stuff. And certainly in the studio, you're working with either with probably shooting Polaroids or with a strobe meter. In my day, no one used strobe meters. We always shot Polaroids. It was not, and the nice thing about, well, digital, you can see what the light looks like anyway. But in fact, you don't even need to probably even use the strobe meter anymore
I
because
don't.
it's all digital. You just see what you got. Oh, turn the strobe down, turn the strobe up.
That's wow.
Ooh.
That's beautiful. Wow.
This is the one I wanted. I say,
Oh,
if you saw the raw file, you know I did very little to it.
yeah. Gorgeous. Mm.
Now this I turned the green down and you know just in color balance, turned the magenta up because these flowers were very blue naturally, but I liked the quality it gave me by doing this. Okay, Stephanie, this is with fill
Wow.
flash and wind,
Beautiful.
and probably again shooting at something like maybe f5.6 at maybe a 200 millimeters. So I really love the quality it kind of gives you that's soft and hard.
Beautiful. Mm.
This was just hanging on a plant, but it looks like it's hanging in midair. I always like this. These are reflections. This is shooting in a lake where I'm photographing on these little seed things on branches, and the lake has things growing in it that's causing all these reflections. And this is how it comes, again, shooting with a fairly wide open.
Mm. Wow.
It's funny, I've been to this lake, these were done, I think, last year, and I keep looking for this. And again, every year it's different. I've been unable to find anything that will give me reflections like this, unfortunately, because I love these reflections. And I just wanted to say that you can do abstracts without doing macros. This is actually a canyon in Utah called Singing Slot, though it's really, I don't know why it calls it that. Sorry? Did somebody say something?
No, it's my dog. I'm muting
Oh,
her.
it's called Singing Slot. And I don't know why they call it a slot canyon because it's just this little entryway and there's no real slot in there. But I love the colors of the walls. Here's another non-macro abstract. Now, I'm going to offend all you Californians by saying I've seen amazing sunsets on the coast. I've seen amazing sunsets in Sierras, but the skies in Colorado, I have never seen skies like this ever, particularly in the fall. But even sometimes now, I'll just come out in the morning, and before I even get into my car, I'll just grab the tripod from the back of my car, run down to the street and try to get something just shooting from the street and say, okay, I'll Photoshop out the branches on the side or something. This was shot from my driveway one evening. This was taken, I think, from the street one morning before I decided to go where I was planning to go.
It's a dragon.
Yeah. And that's actually it. I was going to say is that someone described my photographs as haikus. And I met this person, a Brit living in Japan, on Instagram. And I decided to do a book with him where he would write haikus for my photographs. So my wife, Emily, designed it. I was amazed at the quality of the design she did. So I'm going to show you a few pages of it. And I think that's it. Yes.
Oh, that was so beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Definitely unique and not your typical wildlife. I love it.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, I know. I mean, as I think you were saying is like, I think we find our voice by just going out and doing it and letting, getting excited by whatever excites us and working on doing it the best we can.
Oh,
And the thing I'll always say is that know your equipment and know your equipment so you don't have to think about it. Have it be second nature. So you look at something and say, yes, this lens, this exposure, and then of course you could vary it, but you shouldn't have to spend 10 minutes just because you don't know what lens opening to use or what shutter speed to use. You should be able to focus on what you're seeing.
I have to say this transcends photography and it blends into art.
Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
I as a photographer, of course, we're always thinking about what we're taking, but what I see when I look at this is fine art, and the fact that it was made from a photograph or from your impression of what you saw. It to me, it's just pure. It's photo art. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Photo art is it? Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
And this,
And it's a
sorry,
no, go ahead.
your work's very feminine, which I really like. just very pretty.
Oh, thanks.
Pretty. The colors are really cool. I just love it.
I, it's, I, I don't like to talk about these things because it's a very sensitive subject. And I think women have a lot of rights to be very offended how they've been treated and put in certain roles. But I take that as a compliment, even though I'm definitely straight. And I think I'm definitely a guy in a lot of ways. I really loved, when I worked in commercial photography, there were a couple of female photographers I worked for, and I really loved working for them because their way of seeing things was so different. And I always liked, in working in fashion, seeing how women would photograph fashion, because a whole level of sexuality of what we think of is taken out of it. And that's why I loved it. If you Google Deborah Turbeville, look at her work. It's nothing like what I do, but you would be amazed that this is a woman who was shooting for Vogue.
Deborah, what?
Deborah Turbeville, Turbaville. Unfortunately, she's not alive anymore. I really loved her. She was such a character. Anyway, but I would take that because I try to have things be emotional. I think that's trouble, I think, with a lot of abstract art is it's not emotional. I mean, in fact, I think when they think of abstract photography, there was one guy whose name I'm not going to remember, of course. It'll probably come to me in the middle of talking about it, who did a lot of photographs of black and white, large photographs of rocks, I think in the 50s and 60s. And that was like the beginning of it. And that was the time when abstract painting was big. But I look at his stuff, to me, it's just boring. There's no feeling to it. And I think a lot of abstract painting can be that way too, but though it doesn't have to be. Like I'll think Mark Rothko is an abstract painter, but his stuff is amazing. It doesn't have to be not feeling, but I think a lot of it is lacking that. And I try to have some feeling in my stuff.
Well, you do. You have accomplished that. Can you put yourself back on the picture?
Oh, sure. I guess I have to stop sharing then. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We should do our photo challenge real quick.
Should I leave this up or unshare?
No, unshare, and I'm going to open up that flyer that we made.
So Dan, I see a lot of, and I think about what you were just saying about the emotion, but there's some Japanese touch to it with a little more whimsical approach.
Yeah.
I'm trying to feel through the art because there's so many different things, and this is all really in your eye. This is what you're seeing and or feeling, I should say.
Well, I mean, the thing that I noticed, the poetry in motion part, you really nailed it.
Oh, thank you. Oh, one thing it's too late to share. Well, you should give out in fact, I'll put it in chat, my website. And if you're interested in the book is $24.95 and it's print. You know, you basically it'll print it. It's basically print to buy or whatever they call it. So, and it has a link on my webpage. So I should.
Is that the one with the haiku or something?
Yeah. So how would I create meeting chat? Is this it?
If you tell me what I can put it in.
And you had a link to his website earlier in the stuff that you sent out.
I can't remember. Did I?
Yeah,
I did.
you're that good.
Oh, good. Good.
So, okay, I just put my website in chat.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to do a quick screen share. So I talked Dan into helping me come up with this. Our August photo challenge is go out in nature and create an abstract nature photograph. And I'm so inspired. I can't wait to try.
And this is going to be on Facebook in Fairfax Photo Club?
Yes, sir.
I'll join it.
Good.
Yay.
It's very expensive.
No, it's not. What do you mean?
I'm kidding.
Wait, abstract, what did you say? Abstract nature?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Mallory, go to the watershed. Go to Lagunitas Lake, go to Alpine Lake.
Yeah, I do. I do a lot. It's
In
beautiful
fact,
there.
if I'm not going to find it. There was a photo I was going to use in here, but it didn't really work. I felt visually that which is an abstract photograph. I took a fog on Alpine Lake that I shot actually large format, but it was so different than everything else. I figured it didn't.
Could you send it to me?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Actually, you got a second. I know the name of it. I'm gonna bring up my website and see if I can find the name of it.
While you're looking, I just want to tell Sandy, I'm going to check out the 52 frames. That sounds really interesting.
It is fun. What I like about it is there are people all over the world who are participating, and they have similar enthusiasm. So
Love that.
it's a neat community.
I'm bringing it up right now. That's good. Thank you. I knew I'd
Yeah.
get some tidbits from you. New
I just realized I'm not shared,
Yeah.
so I can't show you this.
Oh, go ahead
Oh,
and
wow.
share. Feel free to
What?
share. Go ahead and share.
Oh, okay.
Just wanted to grab this. Get some good ideas.
So let me
Can you go to another flower photo so we can look while you're doing that?
sure
Another
yes,
page,
well, I'll
another
go back.
page.
Yeah, I love
Um,
these.
I
love
love the delicacy with the translucence
How's
and
that?
Oh, I
nice.
love that one. That's I mean, I love
Yeah.
so many of them. That's gorgeous.
I'm definitely play. I'm looking forward.
It's funny, Photoshop Bridge, particularly the way I run it, has become so buggy that I can't just close it. You know, on a Mac, things don't close. Things will just kind of go in the background, so to speak, and take less memory. Like while Windows, things actually completely close. But I can't close Bridge on the Mac because if I start it up again, it starts up as this little box. It doesn't save its space. But if I thoroughly close it, it'll come back in its space. So Bridge just took forever to load. So you'll excuse me. Let me see if I can find this thing very quickly. Where would it be? Ah, this is it, actually. This is it, Mallory.
Oh,
This was just
wow.
taken a foggy morning on Alpine Lake, probably
That's
on Belvia.
yeah. But oh, Dan, you're incredible. I love this. I love all of this so far.
Oh, thank you.
My
I'm just saying, if
regular-
you're in Fairfax, just go up to the watershed. There's so much there.
Yeah.
it's always my regular, I always want to darken everything. And I like that you keep stuff very faint. I'm gonna be less aggressive with my
Subtle. The word is
yeah,
subtle.
very subtle. I mean, at first I was like, God, I'd go darker, but no, I did. Now I like how muted and soft it is. It's so
Mm.
Dan, it was incredible.
Oh, thank you.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
I'm not even a big fan of nature photography, I have to say. And I was just mesmerized by your work.
Oh, thanks.
I second that. So we've got our oh, and Dan has recommended a photographer who we will be
Oh, great.
who will be presenting in October. So I am looking for more photographers again. I've run out. Usually I'm 6 months ahead and I've run out.
So maybe you could put it in the Ross Valley Reporter or something, or on the website for the town.
That we're looking for more photographers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There was-
I'm concerned about getting too many.
There was a guy who lived in Sausalito who did kind of very interesting abstract things. I used to see him in art fairs early on, but then I haven't seen him for years, and since I haven't even been out there forever. Mallory, you wouldn't know his name. No, I get, darn. I'll see if I can get any more names for you, Stephanie.
Thank you. And you saw like my process when I was looking at their work. There was some people I was just like, yeah.
I know.
And then when I saw what I think is just a little, I had a really great portrait photographer want to present, but it just didn't seem, it didn't have a quirkiness to it, or it didn't have a whimsical vibe, or, just something a little different,
Sure.
So that's what I'm looking for. Like the tutu guy, like that was just so unusual.
I love that one.
I know.
That was true.
But we don't have anything scheduled for next month, so this is a first.
So
And
you were gonna skip 1 month
I'm
for the
kind of
summer?
thinking over the summer, this might not be a bad idea, because I know I'm very busy with fundraising and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
we might take a month off.
almost every place that I go to is now, they took last month off. They're gonna, yeah.
I'll be at Burning Man at the end of the month too. So I have my hands full right now. Okay, well, thank you, Dan.
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Dan.
Thanks for
Tomorrow
having
I'll get
me.
your video up and
Thanks, Dan.
online, and I'll send you a link. And if you want the file, you can have that too.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, where are you showing your stuff? What are you doing with your stuff?
I do open studios every October.
Yeah,
There aren't that, I mean, for a while I was in a gallery in Denver, and it didn't seem to go very well. I mean, it was a cooperative gallery, and I think the problem with cooperative galleries is there's nobody who can sell, including me.
yeah.
So, and I left. It was just too much trouble having to go to Denver all the time, and I didn't feel, and I think we'll find, I didn't seem to notice that so much in California, but at least here, it seems like that the people who are into photography are into photography. If they're just going to see art, they'll walk right by photography, no matter what it is. I mean, in fact, it's very disappointing. I know, because I'm part of Boulder Open Studios, and Boulder Open Studios here is much bigger than Marin Open Studios. Like Marin Open Studio, I could never get arrested. In Boulder Open Studios, I sell things, I meet people, but they will have pop-up galleries, and for a while I would exhibit in them,
Oh.
and they need people to also man them. So I would be sitting there, and I'd watch people walk around and look at things that were nice, but they weren't particularly anything unique. They were nice little, little paintings of things, but they weren't, it wasn't like you were looking at Rothko or de
Yeah,
Kooning or Picasso or Rembrandt, anything. They were just nice, pretty pictures. And no matter what I had, I tried different things, outrageous things I'd sold a lot of everything. They would walk by like the walls were blank. And it was so
Yeah.
depressing.
yeah, you need New York galleries.
Well, yeah, but New York, I think you guys with phones have ruined it for us.
Oh,
I think, well, to
Yeah.
me, you see all these big photographers who never gave workshops before giving workshops. I think photography in general, and the New York photographers, they're people like what's her name, Nan Golden and stuff like that, whose work I do like, but I can't imagine having. I have a book of Nan's here. Do you know her work?
Ned
I can grab
Goldman.
one, see if I can find it quickly.
I'll write it
I don't know
down.
if I will, but is this? Anyway, she photographs, she hangs out with people on the edge, drug addicts, prostitutes, whatever, but she hangs out with them. So they're not like, look at these people. It's more like they're just there with her.
Yeah,
But I can't imagine, and she exhibits there, and I'm saying I like her work, but I cannot imagine a picture of Nan Golden's on my wall. I shoot photographs for walls,
yeah,
and to me, most of what I see, even in Santa Fe, it's like beautiful photographs are not cool anymore. They have to have some kind of thing about them.
yeah,
Which is weird, because photography started out with, Ansel Adams and all, at least nature started all these people doing these amazing things and unbelievable prints.
Yeah.
So I just do what I do, and I'm thankful that, I've managed to create a situation myself where I'm comfortable, and I'd love to sell photographs, probably just for more of the ego trip of selling it and people liking it and everything. So it's not like I need the money or anything.
Do you go online? Do you do it online? Do you?
I show stuff in Facebook and Instagram all the time.
Well, I see your Facebook stuff.
Yeah.
I always see that.
But again, and I've sold some things through art consultants, and I don't know what it is. I worked with one art, this art consultant here, 9.arts, which people will give their right arm to work with. And I've sold not a lot, but maybe 5 pieces through them. But I haven't heard from them since pre-pandemic. And I don't know, again, is it just no one is interested in photography anymore? I worked also with a designer who I did all sorts of things, and I haven't heard from them either. So I don't know. I would love to have an agent,
Yeah, well,
because
that
an
was,
agent,
yeah.
that was the thing with the cooperative guy, a gallery. I mean, there's one gallery here I know that shows art, painting and photography, Bobby Walker, who knows my work. She's actually came to one of my open studios because a friend of hers is a friend of mine. And I went to the last photography exhibit there, and it was just like, even there was one photographer, this woman whose work I'd seen before and really liked, and what she had there was awful. So I don't know what goes for art in the art world
I
anymore.
just finished there. I was reading this book called Get the Picture
Uh-huh.
by Bianca Bosker, and this journalist went and became part of the where they just show all artworks, some of his photography, most are paintings, but it was a whole expose of what you have to do to work with a gallery. I thought it was fascinating.
Well, I'd be very happy to work with a gallery, because at least with a gallery,
Yeah.
they have to sell to be in business. So
Mhm.
and it's so much. I mean, I have a friend who actually who's made an excellent living as a salesman. He's a fabulous salesman. He's a wonderful guy, but he'll even tell me things that, Dean, you could do that. I can't do that. In fact, I invited him to come to my open studio and said, listen, I'll just sit in the back. I always want to see how you work. But what also I'd like about a gallery, because a gallery will know what their clientele is and say, show this, because I'll do a lot of landscapes. And my friend Dean is one of the few people who own a number of my photographs, and he loves my landscapes, but I don't think I've ever sold a landscape at Olden Studio. Most of what I sold is grass pictures.
Yeah.
And I love doing landscapes. I mean, but again, I don't want to do landscapes. The typical Colorado landscape is the maroon bells, where you see the lake, and then you see these wonderful mountains, and then some sky, and it's always shot with a wide angle lens. And I'm not interested. It's been done. I mean, you can shoot that with your phone without thinking.
Well, you're doing art paintings, is how I perceive.
But I'm saying it's not that easy to do. To me, I find it much easier to photograph grasses than to photograph interesting landscapes. I go up to the high country.
Yeah.
I try to go up there once a week, and it's a big deal because, sunrise here now it's maybe 5:45, and it's an hour for me to get up there. So if I want to shoot with decent light, I got to get up at 4:30 in the morning and run out of the house, and it's fine. I'm happy to do it, but it's hard for me to get things that I feel are really unique. And but I would love to say an agent say this I can sell. Great, you do it. I'll give you whatever you want. But
yeah, so
I don't know. It doesn't seem to be my lot in life. That's all I can say.
You got to find someone.
How?
That's a good question. I'll think about it and get back to you.
While you're doing it, find someone for you.
Dan, is there a gallery in your area that has maybe more like Japanese style art?
I don't know of anything in Boulder. I don't know of anyone. For one thing, I have never sold a photograph in a gallery in Boulder. Not that I haven't exhibited them,
Yeah.
I've never sold one. Where I've sold photographs in Boulder, I take that back. There's a group called NOBO, stands for North Boulder Artists. And I put together an exhibit for every 2 years, they have the Denver Month of Photography, which is March. And I put together, it'll be again this coming March 2025, and I put together one for 2023. And I sold a few pieces there, but again, it was mostly to people whom I knew. And there was one couple who came, who one of my cloud photographs is a 40 by 60 version of it in the condo they live in Denver, right in the lobby. And they came because they loved that so much. They ended up buying another copy for themselves, also 40 by 60. But again, I mean, there was a gallery in downtown Boulder that I had exhibited in from time to time. I sold a couple of bin prints, but even then, it got to be very slow, and they wanted me to pay a monthly fee just to be able to show my stuff there, and I said it's not worth it. I'm losing
Oh.
money.
But maybe Sandy, suggestion, I'm gonna add to it. Maybe I have to go to Japan. Be nice.
Well, the weird thing is, the person I did that book with lives outside of Tokyo.
Yeah, perfect.
And he also does photography with his phone. And for some reason or other, I thought the job that Emily did on the book was amazing. And I picked him because I really liked his poetry. He's actually a Zen student, so I thought his stuff worked very well.
Beautiful.
And he seemed once the whole thing was done, I don't know, he probably bought a book, but he didn't make a very big deal about promoting it or anything like that. And I don't know if I offended him, because he used to be a big fan of my work, and I don't even know where to go with that. But at least that part of Japan does not seem that interesting these days.
Yeah. What about it? Like even a home decor.
I worked with this
shop.
designer, and again, there was a period where I went and just Googled art consultants everywhere, sent them an email, sent them examples. I got nowhere. In fact, you'll mention art consultants to photographers. Who are they? How do I meet them? Everybody's trying to do this. And to get seen, I had a guy actually representing me in California. Unfortunately, he's retired. And all he wanted was landscapes. I showed him grasses. He wanted none of that. And but he stopped doing it, unfortunately. And I think also as he got more successful, he started having Galen Rowell and other people, and I wasn't so interesting to him anymore.
Did you do hospitals or anything like Kaiser had?
I have some stuff in hospitals, but again, getting in there is the problem. And again, I'm not a salesman. I mean, I can call and talk to people, but to do cold calling.
No, I get it. Yeah.
Again, if I was, that's why I stayed as a programmer, because I looked at this and then said, if I want to make it, because the weird thing is I used to do open studios in in Fairfax. On 2 weekends, I'd be lucky if 2 people came to the house. And whatever, so I couldn't get arrested in the only place I sold photographs in Fairfax was the Fairfax Festival. And so, but here at least open studios have done well. And some people appreciate photography, and some people appreciate the uniqueness of my stuff. But other than that, the gallery in Denver, there would be people coming to look at paintings. I couldn't even, there were people who'd be writing things up. I never could even get a write-up from these people.
Wow. I think your work's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Really.
I just think, again, I'll just put it in a more broader way, is that I think people take photography for granted and don't, and I would say this is maybe as a horribly arrogant thing to say, but I think most people, it's not taste. It's not taste is something you develop. I don't think they're sophisticated. They haven't developed taste to really know what's good and what's bad. Now, I would say not even just photography, just in art in general. There was a woman I remember working with who was a project manager, and I remember in her office, and she had this photo of her and her husband and one or two kids. And I look at this photo, and I've worked at people, I've worked in studios, but if people want photographs, people want portraits, I always send them to go to Emily. I said, Emily is much better with people than me.
Yeah.
But I looked at her and I said, and this was an attractive woman, and the lighting was lousy. She looked lousy. And she's on my desk. She's thrilled with it. It's a portrait of her family, and God knows what she paid for it. And I wasn't going to bring her down about it, but I looked at it and I said, I could do a much better photograph of her with this.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, and I would say this is not, I would say if someone wanted it, I'd say, go to my wife. She's good at this, not me. But at least I could see how to make people look good and bad. And she paid these people money, and I just felt so bad for her. But it seems like that you have to find people who have some kind of visual sophistication and then also like photography.
Have you seen Stephanie's work?
I love Stephanie's work.
She's amazing. Yeah.
I walked in when I was living in Fairfield, when she first started, I went in there and introduced myself. I thought, person is really good. She's really bringing something. In fact, I mentioned Stephanie to Emily, who, when she lived in Fairfax, wasn't even taking photos. I said, oh, I remember Stephanie's work. Her stuff is really sensitive. She really sees those people.
Yeah, she does.
Thank you, guys.
You do.
You do.
Had a hard day today.
I know what you mean.
I'm going through one of those days where
it's like hard being in business for yourself.
What?
I had a software business, and I was making a good living, but at some point, all of a sudden, software became a field that you could make a decent living in. I think it's what became. All of a sudden, everyone had computers, and I just ended up working for someone else. I didn't have to worry about having employees, having to buy them health insurance, having to pay rent and everything. Having your own business is really hard. And particularly when it's small, it's feast or famine. It's never like, oh, I just have enough to keep busy and make a good. No, I'm either starving or I'm completely overwhelmed.
Yeah,
it's really hard running a business.
I'm very happy to have a slow season because I know that the busy season starts for me in end of August, beginning of September. And
when school starts.
When school starts, because I photograph schools.
Yeah.
And I picked up 2 new ones. It's physically draining work. It's very exhausting.
Yeah.
I can imagine. You have to move very quickly.
Yeah. And it's a lot of organization skills, which I've learned.
Is it harder than weddings?
I don't really do. I do what I call 1-hour ceremonies. I don't do.
I shot weddings for someone. At least with weddings, the weddings we were doing were very informal.
Yeah, that's
so I just shot, with 2 cameras and 2 speed lights. One with a wide angle. These are days before Zoom was that big. So one with probably maybe a 35 and one with a 105 or something.
Yeah.
I shot one and with film, and somebody had put the developer I lost everything.
I have a story like that too.
There was a place I used to go to that specialized in doing processing for weddings. Where was it? I think it was in San Rafael or something. I forget. I don't even remember, but it was years ago.
Yeah, never again.
Was it Kodak 100 I was using those days? It was post Kodacolor. I think it was Kodak 100 I would shoot with or something.
Oh, I don't remember what I was shooting with. But nothing worked. Pierre Valaya Khan was the guy who was marrying them. And I totally blew. I think he was upset with me, so he made it all messed up.
Oh God.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Dan. That was really amazing. Amazing. I hope you come back to Sue. I mean, Stephanie has picked some amazingly good photographers besides you, other ones that are very interesting.
Well, Maureen is very interesting. She's done everything. She's done reportage. She's done everything. Look, Maureen Ruddy Burkhardt. I think that's it. I think it's Maureen Ruddy
Oh,
Burkhardt.
is that who you're gonna invite here? Is that
She's coming in October.
Maureen?
It's going to be a good show. I mean, a good presentation.
Because now she's doing stuff backed with gold leaf and stuff.
I can't wait to see it. I like that it's fun for me. Like personally, I wouldn't want Ansel Adams because we've seen it so much. You know, I like all these unique, like Todd Pickering, I thought was really interesting because it was almost like he was doing portraits of animals and they had a little quirkiness to them. And I just love that. Like just certain things that make a photographer a little different. I love. And we've had great members speak too. Terry spoke, and that was a great show. And Donald's done it twice. And I was gonna tell y'all earlier, I forgot to press record on his the very first one, and so I'm kicking myself because it would have been really nice to have that first presentation.
We'll make him do it again.
Yes, we should.
Yeah,
He did a
good.
second one, and it was a technical disaster. Like we had some trouble with it technically because he was trying to show how to do process, and somehow it didn't transfer. And so I want him to have a video up there. So yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe he'll be one of our next speakers.
Cool.
Good idea. And he just texted. He's fine. He fell asleep.
Stephanie, put me on your mailing list.
I think you are on it. I'm surprised you didn't get. Will you check and see if it's in spam?
I didn't get invited. I know because I looked
I don't
back
think-
and the last thing I got from you was your response to Maureen.
Will you type in Fairfax Photo Club? Maybe it came from another email.
No, but I looked. I didn't do a search. I just looked for previous emails because I didn't see it. Because I remembered the last thing I saw anything about Fairfax Photo Club was Maureen.
I could have sworn you were on our list.
Anyway, you'll excuse me, but it's 20 to 10 past my bedtime because I get up 5:30 in the morning for the live.
Night,
But
everybody.
I probably won't tomorrow.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks.
Oh, thanks for
Stephanie.
having me.
Thanks,
Bye,
Dan. Great
everyone.
work.
Oh, thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.